There are marriages that end loudly with screaming and accusations, and dramatic confrontations that everyone sees coming from a distance. And then there are marriages that end quietly, with the sudden revelation of a truth that has been hiding in plain sight, a truth so carefully concealed that when it finally breaks open, it destroys everything in a single moment of devastating clarity. When 42-year-old Nicole Patterson walked onto the Family Feud stage in June 2025 to celebrate what she believed was 20 years of a strong and faithful marriage, she had no idea that her husband's coworker, sitting in the audience with information she felt morally obligated to share, would stand up in the middle of the game and expose a betrayal so complete and so calculated that Steve Harvey would stop the show immediately and refuse to continue until the truth had been fully confronted. What happened next would prove that the most painful betrayals are not always the ones that happen in a moment of weakness, but sometimes the ones that are planned and executed and maintained with deliberate deception over years. Before we dive into this story of hidden affairs, public exposure, and the moment a woman's entire reality shattered on live television, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Because what you are about to witness will remind you that some lies are so elaborate that when they finally unravel, they take everything with them. The Family Feud studio that Thursday afternoon in June was filled with the usual excitement of a taping day. Two families stood ready to compete, and the atmosphere suggested this would be a straightforward, enjoyable episode. On one side stood the Morrison family from Chicago, a large extended family group that radiated warmth and competitive energy. On the other side stood the Patterson family from Atlanta, led by Nicole Patterson and her husband Derek. Nicole was 42 years old, attractive in an understated way, with the kind of smile that suggested she was genuinely happy to be there. She wore a dress that looked new, chosen specifically for television, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone whose life was stable and good. She had every reason to be confident. 20 years of marriage to Derek, 2 children, Emma who was 18 and about to start college, and Lucas who was 15, a comfortable home in a good neighborhood. Derek had a successful career as a financial advisor. Nicole worked part-time as a graphic designer from home. On paper, from the outside, their life looked like the American dream realized. Derek Patterson stood beside his wife with his arm around her shoulders, the picture of a devoted husband. At 44, he was fit and well-dressed, with the polished appearance of someone who understood that image mattered in his profession. He smiled easily, made jokes with Steve Harvey during the warm-up, and seemed completely at ease with the cameras and the attention. Their 2 children stood with them, along with Nicole's sister Rebecca, who completed their team of 5. Steve Harvey worked the stage with his usual energy, getting both families comfortable, asking the standard introduction questions that set up the human interest element of the show. When he reached Nicole and Derek, he stopped with his trademark grin. Nicole and Derek Patterson, 20 years of marriage, that is something to celebrate. What is the secret? Derek answered first, smooth and confident. Communication, trust, and marrying your best friend. Nicole is everything to me, has been since the day we met. Nicole beamed. He is my rock, my partner. I could not imagine doing life with anyone else. Steve nodded approvingly. That is beautiful. That is what marriage should be. Now let us play some Family Feud. The first round began normally. Survey questions, enthusiastic answers, the Morrison family celebrating their points with theatrical energy. The Patterson family played well, with Derek taking the lead on most questions, Nicole supporting with quieter but thoughtful answers. Their children were engaged and funny. Rebecca, Nicole's sister, provided comic relief with her animated reactions. Everything was proceeding exactly as a typical Family Feud episode should. And then, in the middle of the second round, a woman stood up in the audience. She was in her early 30s, professionally dressed, with dark hair and the kind of nervous determination that suggested she had been wrestling with a decision and had finally made it. She did not shout. She did not cause a scene. She simply stood, raised her hand, and in a voice that was quiet but carried clearly in the suddenly silent studio, she said, "I am sorry to interrupt, but I cannot sit here and watch this anymore." Every head in the studio turned toward her. Steve Harvey stopped mid-sentence. Nicole looked confused. Derek's face went through a rapid transformation from confusion to recognition to something that looked very much like panic. Steve, with the instincts of someone who had dealt with countless unexpected moments, raised his hand to signal the producers and then addressed the woman directly. "Ma'am, we are in the middle of taping a show. I am going to have to ask you to sit down. The woman did not sit down. My name is Amanda Chen. I work with Derek Patterson. And I need Mrs. Patterson to know something before this goes any further. Nicole's confusion was shifting into something else now, something that looked like the first whispers of fear. Derek had gone very still beside her, his polished confidence completely evaporated. Steve Harvey's expression changed. He was no longer the entertainer. He was reading the room, reading Derek's body language, reading the tension that was suddenly thick enough to cut. Amanda, whatever you have to say, maybe this is not the time or place. I think it is exactly the time and place, Amanda said, and her voice carried something that sounded like moral conviction mixed with regret. I have been carrying this for 3 years. 3 years of watching him lie to his wife. 3 years of being told to keep my mouth shut because it was not my business. But sitting here watching them celebrate their marriage on television, watching her smile like everything is fine when it is not fine, I cannot do it anymore. The studio was completely silent. Nicole had turned to look at Derek, and the expression on her face was one of dawning horror. Derek, who is this woman? What is she talking about? Derek opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was looking at Amanda with an expression that was equal parts fury and desperation, a look that told everyone watching that whatever Amanda was about to say, Derek desperately needed her not to say it. Steve Harvey stepped forward, positioning himself between the family on stage and Amanda in the audience. Okay, everyone needs to take a breath here. Amanda, are you saying what I think you are saying? Amanda looked directly at Nicole. Mrs. Patterson, your husband has been having an affair with our coworker Vanessa for the last 4 years. It is not a rumor. It is not a mistake. It is a relationship. They have been together for 4 years, and everyone at our office knows except you. The words landed like a physical blow. Nicole actually stumbled backward, her hand going to her mouth. Her sister Rebecca immediately moved to support her. The children, Emma and Lucas, were staring at their father with expressions of shock and betrayal. Derek finally found his voice. That is not Amanda, you do not know what you are talking about, this is insane. Is it? Amanda pulled out her phone. Because I have text messages, I have emails. I have photos from the company retreat last month where you and Vanessa shared a hotel room while you told your wife you were at a conference. I have evidence, Derek, years of evidence. And I am done pretending I do not. Steve Harvey raised both hands. Okay, stop, everyone stop, we are not doing this, not like this. He turned to the producers. Cut the cameras, stop recording, this is not television anymore. But the cameras kept rolling because the producers understood that what was happening was bigger than a game show, was real and raw and the kind of moment that could not be manufactured. Steve turned to Nicole, and his voice was gentle but firm. Mrs. Patterson, I need to know, did you have any idea about this, any suspicion at all? Nicole was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. No, I had no idea. I trusted him completely. 20 years, I trusted him. Steve looked at Derek with an expression that was no longer neutral, no longer the friendly host. It was the look of a man who had seen something that disgusted him. Derek, is what this woman is saying true? Have you been having an affair for 4 years? Derek's face went through several expressions: denial, calculation, and then, finally, resignation. He must have realized in that moment that there was no way out, no story that would cover this, no explanation that would make it go away. Yes, he said quietly. Yes, it is true. Nicole made a sound that was not quite a scream but was close, a noise of pure pain. Rebecca wrapped her arms around her sister while glaring at Derek with unconcealed hatred. Emma, the 18-year-old daughter, was crying. Lucas, the 15-year-old son, looked like he wanted to hit his father. Steve Harvey shook his head slowly. 4 years. You have been lying to this woman for 4 years. You have been coming home to her every night and lying to her face for 4 years. It is complicated, Derek started to say. No, Steve interrupted, his voice hard. It is not complicated. It is simple, you made a choice. Every single day for 4 years, you made a choice to betray your wife. You made a choice to sleep with another woman. You made a choice to lie about where you were and who you were with. You made a choice to let your wife believe that your marriage was solid when you were actively destroying it. None of that is complicated. All of that is just you being a man who valued his own desires more than his family. Derek tried to respond, but Steve kept going. And you brought her here. You brought your wife to this show to celebrate your marriage on national television while you were actively cheating on her. What kind of man does that? Amanda, still standing in the audience, spoke again. I can answer that, Mr. Harvey. He is the kind of man who tells his mistress that his marriage is over in everything but name, who tells Vanessa that he is only staying with his wife for the kids, who promises that once Lucas graduates high school, he will leave. He is the kind of man who lives two complete lives and feels entitled to both of them. Nicole was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. Rebecca was holding her up, literally holding her up because Nicole's legs seemed to have stopped working. For years, Nicole whispered. For years, and I never knew. How did I never know? Emma, the daughter, spoke for the first time. Her voice was shaking with rage. How could you do this to Mom? How could you stand up here and put your arm around her and lie? How could you tell Steve Harvey she was your best friend while you were cheating on her? Derek's face crumpled. Emma, I am sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I never meant to hurt anyone. But you did, Lucas said, his voice breaking. You hurt all of us. You made us come on this show and smile for the cameras while you were lying to everyone. You made us think we had a good family, but it was all fake. Steve Harvey pulled chairs onto the stage. Sit down, all of you. Because we are not walking away from this. We are not pretending this did not happen. This is real. This is a man who betrayed his family for 4 years, and we are going to talk about it. Nicole sat down heavily. She was not crying anymore. She had moved past crying into some other state, a kind of shock that made her seem very small and very fragile. Derek sat several feet away from her, his head in his hands. The children sat with their mother, both of them touching her, trying to offer comfort they were too young to really understand how to give. Rebecca stood behind her sister like a sentinel. Steve turned to Amanda, who was still standing in the audience. Why now? Why did you choose to say something now after 3 years of knowing? Amanda's voice carried the weight of moral struggle. Because I have been complicit in this. I knew what he was doing and I stayed quiet because I told myself it was not my business. But watching them walk onto the stage, watching her look so happy, watching him pretend to be a devoted husband, I realized that staying quiet made me part of the lie. And I could not do it anymore. I could not let her keep believing something that was not true. Steve nodded slowly. You did the right thing, even though it was hard, even though you knew it would cause pain. You told the truth. And the truth, as devastating as it is what Mrs. Patterson needed to hear. He turned back to Derek. I want you to explain to me how this works. How does a man maintain an affair for 4 years without his wife knowing? How does that level of deception function? Derek raised his head. He looked destroyed, but whether from shame or from being caught was unclear. I told Nicole I was working late or traveling for business or having dinner with clients. I created a separate phone for texts and calls with Vanessa. I was careful. I thought I was protecting everyone. Protecting? Steve's voice rose. You were not protecting anyone. You were protecting yourself. You were protecting your ability to have 2 lives. You do not get to call that protection. Nicole finally spoke, her voice hollow. 4 years. That means when Lucas was 11 and Emma was 14, you were already lying to me. That means for the last 4 Christmases, you were cheating. For the last 4 anniversaries, you were with someone else. Everything about our life for the last 4 years has been a lie. Derek started to speak, but Nicole held up her hand. I do not want to hear excuses. I do not want to hear that it just happened or that you never meant to hurt me or that you still love me, because none of that matters. You made a choice every single day for 4 years to betray me. You made a choice to bring me here and celebrate our marriage on television while you were actively destroying it. You made that choice, and I have to live with the consequences. Steve Harvey leaned forward. Nicole, I know you are in shock right now. I know this is devastating, but I need you to hear something. This is not your fault. Whatever problems existed in your marriage, whatever Derek tells himself to justify what he did, this is not on you. He could have talked to you. He could have gone to counseling. He could have asked for a divorce, but instead he chose to lie. That is on him. All of it is on him. Nicole nodded, but her expression suggested she was not really processing anything, that she was somewhere far away trying to understand how her entire reality had just been ripped apart. Rebecca spoke, her voice cold and controlled. I want to know about this Vanessa. Who is she? Does she know he is married? Amanda answered. She knows. She has always known. She works in our office. She has met Nicole at company events. She shook her hand at the holiday party last year while sleeping with her husband. She knows exactly what she is doing. The revelation seemed to hit Nicole even harder. She met me, she looked me in the eye knowing what she was doing. Yes, Amanda said simply. Steve Harvey stood up and walked to the edge of the stage. When he spoke, he was addressing the camera, addressing the millions of people who would eventually watch this. What we are witnessing right here is the destruction of a family, not because of one mistake, not because of a moment of weakness, but because of 4 years of calculated, deliberate betrayal. Derek Patterson made a choice to have an affair. He made a choice to maintain that affair for 4 years. He made a choice to lie to his wife, to his children, to his extended family. And he made a choice to bring them all on national television to celebrate a marriage that he knew was built on deception. He turned back to Derek. I have been doing this show for a long time. I have seen a lot of things. But this level of deception, this level of disrespect for your family, this is something else. You did not just cheat on your wife, you made her complicit in your lie, you made her celebrate something that did not exist. You made your children believe in a family that was not real. That is cruel. That is beyond just an affair. That is systematic deception. Derek was crying now, his face in his hands. I know I destroyed everything. I know there is no excuse. You are right, Steve said. There is no excuse, so do not try to make one. Do not try to explain it away. Just own what you did. Own that you chose this. Own that you destroyed your family. The conversation continued for over an hour. Steve brought in a therapist who happened to be in the building for another show, someone who could provide professional guidance for Nicole and the children. They talked about betrayal and trauma and how families process this kind of revelation. Nicole talked about the signs she had missed, the late nights that she had accepted without question, the business trips that seemed more frequent, the times Derek had been emotionally distant and she had chalked it up to work stress. I trusted him, she said over and over. I just trusted him completely. How do I ever trust anyone again? The children talked about feeling betrayed not just on behalf of their mother but for themselves. Emma said she had looked up to her father, had believed he was a good man, and now did not know how to reconcile the father she thought she knew with the man who had done this. Lucas, younger and less articulate, just kept saying that his family was fake, that everything he had believed about his life was a lie. Rebecca, the sister, was perhaps the angriest. She talked about watching Nicole build a life with Derek, about being a bridesmaid at their wedding, about trusting him with her sister's heart. You do not just betray your wife, she said to Derek. You betray everyone who trusted you with her, everyone who believed you when you said you loved her. You make liars out of all of us. And Amanda, the coworker who had stood up in the audience and spoken the truth, talked about why she had finally decided to say something. I have a daughter, she said. She is 7 years old, and I thought about what kind of example I was setting for her by staying quiet. I thought about whether I wanted her to grow up believing that loyalty means protecting men who hurt women, and I decided that I did not. I decided that telling the truth, even when it is hard, even when it causes pain, is the right thing to do. When the episode finally aired 3 weeks later, it was unlike anything Family Feud had ever broadcast. The producers debated heavily about whether to air it at all. It was painful. It was uncomfortable. It was the kind of raw human devastation that made people want to look away, but it was also real. And the truth, however painful, was what made it powerful. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Derek Patterson became instantly infamous, his name trending on social media as an example of the worst kind of betrayal. Vanessa, the other woman, was identified by internet sleuths within hours and faced professional and personal consequences. The company they worked for issued a statement addressing the situation and the impact on workplace conduct. But the most powerful responses came from the people who saw themselves in Nicole's story. The people who had been betrayed by partners they trusted completely. The people who had believed their marriages were solid only to discover years of deception. The people who understood what it felt like to have your entire reality shattered in a single moment. Nicole received thousands of messages. Some from other betrayed spouses offering support, some from therapists offering services, some from lawyers offering representation for the divorce that everyone knew was coming, and many messages from women thanking Amanda for speaking up, for choosing truth over comfort, for refusing to be complicit in a lie. Nicole Patterson filed for divorce 2 weeks after the episode aired. Derek did not contest it. He had lost everything in a single afternoon: his marriage, his relationship with his children, his reputation, eventually his job when the company decided his conduct had violated their ethics policy. Vanessa lost her job as well. The divorce was finalized within 6 months. Nicole got the house, primary custody of Lucas, who was still a minor, and a substantial settlement. Derek was ordered to pay child support and alimony. He moved to another city, trying to escape the infamy that had attached to his name. Emma went to college carrying the weight of what her father had done. She struggled initially, but found support in a campus group for children of divorce. She eventually wrote a powerful essay about growing up believing in a lie that was published in a national magazine and helped other young adults dealing with parental betrayal. Lucas had a harder time. 15 is a difficult age to process that kind of betrayal. He acted out, struggled in school, pushed his mother away because she was safe to push. But Nicole, with the support of her sister and therapist and the community that had rallied around her, held steady. She gave Lucas space to be angry while also maintaining boundaries. And slowly, over years, he found his way back. 5 years after that June afternoon on Family Feud, Nicole Patterson sat in her home, which she had renovated and made completely her own, erasing every trace of Derek's presence. She had started her own successful graphic design firm. She had rebuilt her life from the ground up, not perfectly but authentically. In an interview with a women's magazine about life after public betrayal, Nicole said something that resonated with thousands of readers. That day on Family Feud was the worst day of my life. Finding out on national television that my husband had been cheating for 4 years, that my entire marriage had been a lie, that everyone except me knew the truth, it destroyed me. For months after, I wished Amanda had stayed quiet. I wished I could have lived in ignorance a little longer. She paused. But now, 5 years later, I understand that Amanda gave me a gift. She gave me the truth. And the truth, as devastating as it was, set me free, because I could not heal from something I did not know existed. I could not rebuild my life while living in a lie. Amanda's choice to speak up, it saved me. Not immediately, not painlessly, but eventually. Amanda Chen, the coworker who had stood up that day, also gave an interview years later. I have thought a lot about that decision, about whether it was my place to say something, about whether I caused more harm than good. And here is what I have come to believe: the truth is not always kind, the truth is not always easy, but the truth is necessary. Nicole deserved to know. Her children deserved to know. And someone had to be brave enough to tell them. Steve Harvey, in a retrospective about the most difficult moments from his television career, spoke about the Patterson family episode. I have stopped shows before. I have dealt with unexpected situations. But that day, watching a woman's life fall apart in front of me because her husband had betrayed her so completely, that was different. Because it was not just an affair. It was 4 years of systematic deception. It was a man who had no intention of stopping, who had brought his wife on television to celebrate a marriage he was actively destroying. That level of cruelty, that level of disrespect, I could not let it go unchallenged. He continued, but what I remember most is not Derek. Cowards like him are common. What I remember is Amanda, a woman who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by speaking up. Who stood up in a room full of strangers and told a truth that she knew would cause pain but that she believed needed to be told. That is courage. That is integrity. And that is what changed Nicole's life, not the betrayal itself, but having someone courageous enough to expose it. 10 years after the episode, Derek Patterson remained largely out of public life. He had attempted to rebuild his career and his reputation with limited success. His relationship with his children was fractured, maintained through occasional awkward dinners that felt more like obligation than connection. He had married Vanessa eventually, though that relationship was reportedly strained, built as it was on a foundation of betrayal and scandal. Nicole, meanwhile, had thrived. Her design firm was successful. Her children, now adults, had both found their footing. Emma was a therapist specializing in family trauma, directly inspired by her own experience. Lucas was in college, studying business, still carrying some anger but learning how to channel it productively. Nicole had dated, had even had a serious relationship that lasted 2 years before ending amicably. She was open about the fact that trusting again was difficult, that Derek's betrayal had created wounds that might never fully heal. But she was also clear that she was no longer defined by what he had done to her. She was defined by how she had rebuilt after he destroyed everything. If you have been moved by this story of betrayal, public exposure, and the courage to tell the truth when silence would be easier, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share this with someone who has ever discovered a partner's affair. Share this with someone who is carrying knowledge about someone else's betrayal and wondering whether to speak up. Remember that Derek Patterson's affair was not a mistake. It was 4 years of deliberate choices. 4 years of looking his wife in the eye and lying. 4 years of letting her believe in something that did not exist. And remember that Amanda Chen did not cause the pain that Nicole experienced that day. Derek caused it. Amanda just refused to be complicit in hiding it. The truth is not always kind. The truth is not always comfortable. But the truth is what allows healing to begin. Nicole Patterson spent 20 years building a life with a man who betrayed her for 4 of those years. When the truth finally came out, when her entire reality shattered on national television, she thought her life was over. But it was not over. It was beginning. The real life. The authentic life. The life built on truth instead of lies. That is what Amanda's courage gave her. That is what speaking up can do. It destroys the lie so that truth can finally have space to exist.